Those are my options.
Okay, yeah. I do like the novelty seeking. The rich environment is very interesting. Trigger for me.
Yeah.
I went through the list of 17. I'm like, which ones do I actually...
Which ones do I like?
Which ones do I like? It's like I'm shopping.
Yeah, and I appreciate the fact that you like go to the library and we'll study some days, and then some days you'll be in your room.
Right, and it's that whole idea of, I mean, even when I go to the library, it's one floor and there's only a certain number of seats, but I always try to pick a different one.
Ooh.
Try to get a different view because, it creates another layer of novelty. And it's like, it's when Mihai Csikszentmihalyi I was listening to his TED Talk, and he was talking about how the whole phenomena of like, you only have a certain amount of energy you can give towards obtaining new information. That's why we can't listen to two people talk at the same time and understand both of them perfectly, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we're not taking in this information of our environment around us because it's, just new and we're not really like concerned with it. Whereas like, if it's the things in my room, I feel like I like stare at my plants all the time, stuff like that. I love my plants, but I feel like I'm always staring at them. But if I go to the library, it's like I forgot what the metric was, but it's like you get 110% of this metric that you can put towards energy. And like, I guess it takes like 60 per listening to a person, let's say. So 2 would be 120 and exceeding it.
Yeah.
But when I go to the library, it's like instead of 30% of my metric spent towards my environment, it's now like 10 because it's like, I'm just in a library. I'm not going to look around at these things. If I start looking around, people are going to judge me. They say, what is he looking at?
So 2 things. That's interesting. First and foremost, I wanted to do that with the different spot the second time I went to the library this semester, or third time. I don't go often. I like my space.
Right.
I tried to sit in a different seat, man. And I always have to use the computers though, because I feel like that's another layer of novelty. And I didn't bring my laptop last time. I don't really use it as much. I like a desktop feel.
Oh yeah.
And I go and try to sit at a different one. And you know what happens?
What?
It doesn't connect to the internet.
Oh no.
It's just like, and I'm like, bruh, I go to the other one and then I'm like, if you go across the table, you're going to be in the same spot. Okay, but it's kind of new. I haven't been to the library in a while. Yeah, bud, but it's not that new. And I go, all right, well, I guess I got to settle. So I ended up going and sitting there, and I did get work done. Mainly, I got into a planning flow.
Sure.
Yeah.
But, flow didn't become a thing until Wi-Fi did. The Taoists actually never got into flow in ancient China because they didn't have Wi-Fi.
All right. Well, if the work that you're going to do requires the access of the editing of the Notion and Google Calendar, I would say, yeah, it needs the Wi-Fi.
Oh, no, I'm messing with you.
Yeah,
I'm messing with you.
All right.
But that does stink. I really do feel like everything that you went out of your way, you spent some time to find some novelty and capture flow, and of course.
And then they just got this computer's just not connected to the internet, and I look, and I'm pretty techie, so I go and I'm looking at the Ethernet port. I'm like, is it busted? Like, what's it? It's plugged in. Okay, and you take it out, put it back in. No, the DNS just won't connect to the server. This is stupid. I'm like, somebody fix this.
Yeah, waste of time.
Waste of time. And the second thing is, I wonder what the difference is then between, because familiarity is a flow trigger, right? So you were talking about the amount of focus that you could give to your plant.
Right.
So familiarity then for that trigger would be more of familiarity with an interaction style with people, like how we get into flow more easily maybe than I would with a new podcast guest every week.
Yeah, the familiarity, that fell within interpersonal flow, I believe, which is... Got it, yeah. That has more names with like brainstorming. I feel like it's hard to explain. Flow is some kind of definition. So like, on the personal level, it's getting in the zone. Interpersonal, I think it's like brainstorming. But yeah, I think it's pretty intuitive to say that if you're synced up with someone that you've, shared a lot of conversations and data with, it's like much easier to get in the hang.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, Chance did a great job of recognizing what I failed to, which was that each flow trigger is under a subsection that they gave, which I guess, interpersonal would be, or social, sorry. Social is what they call it sometimes. There's multiple sections, and that is important to remember. Yeah, so I do find some familiarity. I find some flow triggers happen when I'm in my space, though, you know?
I feel like you're trying to die on this hill because you mostly you work in your little space, which is very much the same, which is fine. I think that there's good familiarity in the fact that like if you can, white your walls and keep everything kind of pristine and looking the same, that's fine. I think that familiarity is scared of distracting novelty.
Okay, which is fair.
Which I think, like, the things in your room, like your desk is not going to change a whole lot, but I'm staring at my plant every day to see if it's going to grow.
Ah, that's fair. But can I die on this hill then?
Can you die on this hill of familiarity? I think so.
Okay.
But I'm curious what you think about the whole thing that I was mentioning about where you spend your mental energy. Like this 110%. It's a metric. I don't remember the unit, and I'm going to kick myself after the podcast. For not
I understand.
But I'm curious how you feel about if you're in a new situation, do you feel like you're taking in external factors more or less? Because I feel like for me, it's almost like one of those pictures where you've blurred out the background. Like, it's pretty, but you're not looking. Like, it's all blurry, right?
Yeah. Which is fair.
Whereas like with my room, I feel like I pick up on all the subtleties of my room, like the way my desk is organized. I mean, even outside of my plants, like I'm always looking out my window to see who's coming by, how the sky and the beach is looking that day. So I'm curious whether you think we're spending more mental energy or less on our environment, depending on if it's a new environment or a familiar environment.
I think it comes to a level of, the question comes to whether you, as an individual, have a productive space and a decluttered space.
Sure.
Because the science behind decluttering is interesting, right? So a lot of the minimalists and those who believe in lack of clutter, not regarding the sort of cult phenomenon that minimalism has become, and I wrote about it in 10 Steps to Saving Time and Doing More. Check out my free eBook. I haven't done a plug in a while. I haven't done a plug in a while. Actually, no, I'm going to start trying to do that more. But there's a whole section about decluttering and how physical decluttering leads to mental decluttering. And I feel like that sort of coincides with your question about whether I'm focused more or not on my surroundings when I'm in a public place or a different place. Because personally, I have made fully intentional steps with my desk and with my setup. I have the 2 monitors. I have decent cable management. I have the cords exactly where they are. You see the little cable clips, keeping them where they are. I think it matters on the intentionality of your setup in your room, because I'm not distracted by my room being that dirty because I'm not that dirty. I'm not distracted by just looking around. Everything, I have a rule for myself. Outside of napkins, everything should be in the same place at all times.
Which is funny because the whole napkin thing, you were just...
Dimitri, I have a napkin problem.
Dimitri litters this apartment with napkins.
I have a napkin problem.
All rules of intentionality are out the window when it comes to the napkins, because it's like, I'm going to keep one in here just, in case I need to grab a napkin while I'm playing ping pong. It's like, because everyone does that.
What if you need it? You don't know.
I guess I don't. That's true. But you bring up a good point. I think the whole, is it a question not of novelty or familiarity, but rather one of cluttering or decluttering?
Yeah.
Is interesting, because for me, I want to say that my space is pretty clean, but I know that you sometimes come in and you're like,
oh God,
don't you feel like it's cluttered? And for the most part,
it's not that bad.
I feel like it doesn't faze me. I feel like it could be much worse, but perhaps maybe it does. And when I go into a public place, I'm assuming that a library or a coffee shop is just gonna not be cluttered.
Because I feel like there's a subconscious, and I've told you this when you said, oh, it's not that bad. I'm like, yeah, but is this always like, is the thing on the ground, like, is this always the object that's on the ground? You're like, no, I mean, like, it could be a different one. And I'm like, but there's like science to show that subconsciously you are affected by that. And I feel like what you were talking about with how much you can focus on something, right? Doesn't that kind of further that concept to you, that if it's not in its proper place and it's something that's growing, like with your plant, it's going to take up part of your attention?
For sure.
Yeah.
No,
So,
I agree with that.
so would this concept say that a less cluttered space would allow you more percentage whatever to focus? Is that the vibe?
Yeah, I'm going to merge these two dichotomies I created here, and I think that if it's a change that moves you more towards clutter, it's unproductive.
Uh-huh.
But if it's a decluttering change,
Is it good?
it's a good. But familiarity with your decluttering is probably where I'm still on the fence.
Mm-hmm. Because there is a little bit less of a novelty in there.
Right.
Which I would agree with.
And I think that's why I think making an adventure to the library or the coffee shop could be more productive, all friction aside from the home setup.
Yeah. I think there's obviously different people who like different things about what we do in regards to where we sit and how we're doing things. But like do people like larger do people like working with more noise, less noise, all that kind of stuff? I feel like that factors in when we're talking about this too. And for me, I really think that it's important to have a productive setup, and I'm not going to really go far against that because I did just drop a video on why you should have a 2-monitor setup, right? Like I'm very big on my setup. Right. I feel like there's it's a nice crutch to have. Mm-hmm. Because it is going to be where you have to do things sometimes. Weather sucks. Why you're not gonna? Are you gonna go to the IC in the rain? Like what?
No, that's true. I would probably not go to the IC in the rain.
That would suck.
Yeah,
that would suck. So I am thinking that I get that, and I think I should try to do a little bit more novelty in there, because once you get into a rut productivity wise, I think it's important to scoot, like just be like, all right, well, I'm going to the library today because that's the move. But I definitely agree with you on the fact that it's probably a question of whether you have more clutter or not in your room. Like there's probably a reason that we know people who make the statement, oh, I can't get work done unless I'm in the library,
right,
or the center that people study for us. Like sometimes,
as they say, you can learn a lot about someone by visiting their home.
Yeah, and I feel like all those people who make that statement, okay, maybe not for one of our roommates. One of our roommates is pretty clean.
Right.
Yeah, but like for most of them, it's like, I can't study at home. Yeah, well, maybe it's because subconsciously you're so cluttered with all the stuff that's going on. And this is like my minimalism brain just being like, well, look at your room. That answers your question, like as to why you can't get work done at home. It's not because you get distracted by your phone. It could be partially, but maybe it's the social pressure. Obviously, there's so many different factors, but I definitely feel like it's the clutter.
Right. Is social pressure?
If you want to see this episode or any other episode of the Rise Productive podcast, make sure to go and check the show out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else that you can find podcasts today.